88.
88.
Again.
Okay.
All right.
So we have a topic.
We have a topic. Go ahead.
And so the topic is shifting of the old paradigms.
Yeah.
And we watched something on Gaia, and we kind of been on this. I've been on this trajectory thinking anyway, but it seems like there's a process behind it. And so maybe the topic is not that it's happening, or maybe first we'll talk about what it means and how it's happening, but to like the process of it. And I think it will clarify, probably to me too, like a lot of transitional phases that feel uncomfortable, but are part of this larger shifting from the old paradigm narrative, which I think is just an interpretation of us coming into a different set of conscious interpretations.
Yeah. I guess like more specifically, like the way things used to be done, the things that may have been truths of the past aren't necessarily still right. And that doesn't necessarily even mean that they're wrong. It just means that they don't really apply in the same way that they used to. They may be wrong. They may not be wrong. But it's like this, in a sense, it's an out with the old and with the new. But it's like the things that the guy on Guy yesterday, he worded it really well. He said something on the lines of, the things that were brought into this world with the energy back in the day, whether that's 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 2,000 years ago, it doesn't matter. Even if they were right for the time, even if they were great and helpful and positive for the time, that we've moved on from that energy. And where we are now is just different. And so those things don't necessarily still apply in the same way.
Yeah. Or even work in the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. He said this, and I've said this to you before, but like maybe I mentioned it on the podcast, but that it kind of like, I don't think, maybe some slightly controversial statement to make, but like the old teachings that used to apply, like the old teachings of the masters and whatnot, right? Of how, I'm not saying like Jesus masters, I'm talking about just, human interpretations of like spirituality or new age or things like that, right? The perspective at which they saw the problem and then they presented a solution through their teaching to that problem is now completely different than the perspective of their age. And so even though their teaching might have been great and might have been super popular and kind of like, has been everybody's grab onto towards the path of enlightenment, the space out of which they generated the need for that specific teaching does not translate into now.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that their end goal is wrong, or I'm not saying that that when they started, if their goal was to bring in enlightenment to the masses or to bring in a teaching or a way of doing something that is going to get them closer to gnosis, to knowing of self, I'm not saying that is within itself is wrong, because that's still the right trajectory. Everyone has that trajectory if they're on the right path of self. But the process at which you get there, or like this thing that you use as a tool to get there, doesn't necessarily apply at work.
Right. It's like it's still directionally accurate, but it's not. It's not the end all be all completely right way to do things. For a lot of these things.
And I didn't even know if there ever was in all be all. But like some of them are just energetically, they don't track.
Yeah. I mean, you can look back and find like very 3D things where like back in the day, people believed whatever whether that's, slavery is okay, or, women shouldn't vote, or whatever, that those outmoded ideas have fallen away as we get more conscious as a civilization, because that's really what it is that drove that out. But beyond those, even in like esoteric type things, in spiritual teachings, I think it applies there too.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading Manual for Spaceship Earth by Buckminster Fuller, and I didn't finish it. And it's not even a long book, but and I've always liked Bucky, and I previously had read a book about him, not by him, but it was a biography about him by someone else, and it was fascinating. And I'm like, oh, this guy's great. I want to learn more. So I ended up starting this one. I'm like 2/3 of the way through, but I've kind of abandoned it because as I'm reading it, I'm like, there's nothing here that I disagree with. All of his points, yep, I agree. They logically flow from one to the other. Like he goes on to make one. Well, I think this is a great point. He's like, think about all the money that we spend on war, and it's just this incalculable amount of money we spend on, defense and offense and blowing things up, and not to mention all the stuff that we don't even know about. But so many of these wars occur because of some underprivileged group finally having enough. We just can't take it anymore, and they start fighting in some capacity. And then, for example, the United States has to, go fix it or whatever. And it's like, if we had just fed them, or use a fraction of that wartime money to provide food, shelter, infrastructure, whatever it is, to kind of, equalize the world, because the world is not terribly equal. There's, very rich countries and very poor countries, and very rich areas and very poor areas. To equalize that would get rid of a lot of the reason for war in the first place. And people are better off, and we've saved oodles of money, and lives are saved. It's kind of like a win-win-win situation. I agree with this. This sounds great. But still, there's something in the book, and he is very obtuse writer. It's very difficult to read. But there's just something about the frequency of the book that is very archaic. And that's fine. I've read archaic stuff, but off-putting even. Just doesn't jive with the modern world. There's archaic in a way that, oh, this is the wisdom of the ancient masters, right? There's the Kabbalion archaic, which is its own thing. But this is only, when was it written? In the 60s, maybe 70s? I don't know. Not that old. But it feels like, in the same way that, if you were to read something that said, women shouldn't be able to drive, women shouldn't be able to vote, it'd be like, what is this from this weird period of time where that is just nonsense? The book feels like that, even though I can't find anything that I really disagree with in there.
Well, I mean, if that story, I disagree with a lot of things there, right? Like, I mean, we're not going to go political discussion, but, the nuances of who's responsible for wars, whose job it is to fix what, why the wars start to begin with, whose business is it, whose business is it not, right? And deep down, it comes down to individualized frequency and responsibility, right? And instead of like assigning a mass blanket solution to the problems that we cannot even understand, which sounds like, I had to generalize, that's kind of what he did.
Yeah.
That is not how you address any problem. Any problem needs to be addressed internally within through the responsibility of self. And then thus, the outcome of the war, or the outcome of that country, or the outcome of this group of people changes when the frequency of internal self holds responsibility for your own, sovereign decision into what is it that you're propagating as your future.
Right. No, I get
if
that.
you and I are functioning, at least me, right? Like if I'm if I'm the point of awareness and the scope of awareness, and that's this place of frequency that I'm functioning as, there's a responsibility of me as an individualized being. Talking about these brushstroke statements about assumptions about war and interference and problem solving from the physical standpoint almost seems irrelevant.
Yes. No, his book was very much written from the, here are 3D solutions to 3D problems.
Yeah, but right, but for some reason I thought that he was he had like an epiphany and spiritual enlightenment.
It touches on that a little bit, but
And so to me, that means the epiphany and spiritual enlightenment means you're in touch with the inner core of the isness or the oneness or the self that is beyond the physicality. Now, and it could be that if you're...
I think he was,
but,
to some degree, but this book is not. This book it seems like a very 3D book.
No, but if you are an enlightened being and then you go, okay, how do I apply solutions out of this different realm of an interpretation to an existing three-dimensional problem, right? You naturally you would go, oh, I will approach things from love and light. And love and light does mean just taking care of your neighbor, thy neighbor.
Right.
And taking care of just human beings at the human being condition.
Right. I think that was the point of that example.
Yeah. But the solution to that is not taking care of them from the physical good. The solution of that is taking care of them from look within. And I don't know if back then, when he wrote that book, that was an option.
Right. That's back to the original point, is that these maybe these are just new options.
Yeah. When my parents were growing up, every time we talked about all the fucked up shit that happened to us as children because our parents were unaware, and no malicious intent, just unawareness.
Yeah.
You have to question is, my dad brings this up, like, did they have an option to participate in the process of self-awareness, right? And I would like to argue and say, yeah, everybody always had an option. But maybe there is something to the option right now is so widely open and so widely in your face that then you had to search for it and kind of choose this, like a road less traveled, let's say. But now that option is becoming the road more traveled.
Yeah. Obviously anybody throughout any point in history could do this. And plenty did. But I think it gained and lost popularity. Is the wrong word, but normalcy as trends came and went, as different groups became more influential, and then were persecuted out. When if some group like the Essenes were popular, then their teachings are going to reach further. And then if
I don't think Essenes were ever popular.
Well, but then if
the whole point of Essenes is they're not popular.
And then if the Catholic Church comes in and squashes these rebellious groups, then then that will kind of fall away. But in the 60s, 70s, 80s, this quote New Age movement comes in and starts to among other things, but teach people that an individual power to you don't need some intermediate between you and God. You have either a personal connection to God, or you are an expression of God, or whatever, depending on whatever flavor you happen to subscribe to, right? So it kind of separates from the old traditional mainstream religion paradigm in that way. You don't need a priest, to a bishop, to a cardinal, to a pope, for example. You don't need this, ladder of hierarchy in order to have a connection to God and have sins forgiven, and original sin and all this stuff, that it just falls away. And I think the New Age movement really brought in a lot of self-awareness it, it emphasizes, meditation and maybe personal responsibility for what you do and where and why you do it and where it comes from inside. So, yes, our parents did not grow up in the 70s, but I kind of missed the New Age movement, I guess, if you want to call it that, up until the last few years. But
Well, I mean, my parents did grow up in the 70s. I mean, my parents were not grow up in the United States. There's a difference there. We did not have a New Age movement in the United States.
When I say grow up, I mean be like teenagers, because I think those are like the most influential years.
Wait, I'm trying to think. My parents would have been in their 20s. I mean, New Age started in the 60s and 70s. My parents would have been in their teenage years.
My dad was born in 45. Yeah, I mean, I guess, but I mean, it's not just growing up contemporary with it. It's, are you also in a place where that is a thing? I don't know if that's a thing.
I thought it was a thing everywhere, but most of the people.
I think in California it was really a thing, but maybe in New York City it wasn't as much of a thing.
I bet it's everywhere. It's just they got branded as the hippies, and those are the crazies, and so the reason why your parents were not into it is because they branded them as bad.
Yeah.
Not because it was not an option for them.
Sure. Well, I mean, we'll go back another generation. It certainly wasn't there then.
But like back after the World War II, there was that whole thing with the mediumships and paranormal activities and all that, because a lot of people were into that stuff, trying to communicate with the dead.
Was it early 1900s? I thought.
Well, just after all the wars, I think.
I thought it was early 1900s. Either way.
Yeah, but how about this? There was a way to get into that path.
There's always been a way.
Yeah, right. Like when
the way has changed over time, but there's always been a way.
Right.
And how popular it is, and whether or not you believe in it, or you're in some circle that believes in it, or that flat out calls it witchcraft, that you're going to go to hell if you believe in this. That's that would have a big influence on whether or not you believe in it.
Yeah, but I think all of this, just when we talk about the paradigm shift, all of it comes down to, we can talk about on, let's say, global scale, we can talk about on per country scale or per state scale, or California versus the East Coast scale, right? But deep down, it comes down to your personal choice and what you are willing to do to put in the work to know yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And maybe this is going to be a wrong statement again, but I specialize in saying wrong things. But this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but...
anything else you want to preface it with?
Yeah, well, no, I just really believe in this. And so to me, okay, I will say it first and then I will justify it. Whether or not you end up in a happy life, right? Truly happy, like knowing thyself happy, and thus having the most beautiful relationship with everyone around you, regardless, comes down to how much work you're willing to do on yourself. Not the relationships around you, but on yourself. And so the main cause of everything is quite literally no one taking responsibility for themselves.
Yeah.
And I say that knowing that I'm also saying that about me. If something is not going right, I am responsible. If the world looks like shit and I see it, I am responsible. And so nobody wants to hear this, because deep down having you complain out onto the world and having that statement go, yeah, but why is this your reality today? Having it be turned around and come to you, go, yeah, why is this your reality? Not like, what are you going to do about it? It's not what I'm saying. Is, but why is it reality? Why did you bring this into your reality? Just reframing it from that, and then feeling like the stab in the heart or the punch in the stomach. No, by accepting that as your truth, is probably the number one thing that everyone runs away from.
Yeah.
Just responsibility for the world, because your internal inner self reflects that out.
Yeah.
And that's it. So like all the esoteric teachings, right? Like everything that Jesus has ever said is just basically know thyself. And know thyself is see through all the fucking bullshit that you bring in and propagate minute to minute, millisecond to millisecond basis.
Yeah. No, I mean, that I wholeheartedly agree.
But think about how many conversations you and I have had with people, like all kinds of people, like even before we were on the path of awakening, and then that's trying to do this ourselves. And even before, where you genuinely sit down and you try to have a real conversation, just like not like superficial bullshit, but real conversations of how you and I can have a better relationship. And how many of those conversations basically went absolutely nowhere because it was a one-sided of, well, maybe you can start looking at things from this way, or this is how I see things. And what's coming from you is just a rejection of everything that you're saying. Because that responsibility is, this is how I see it. And then on your end, you would go, yeah, but this is how I see it. And then we can have an amicable back and forth,
which sounds like
sense of responsibility,
which sounds like how any conversation should go. But what used to happen, what probably still happens mostly in the world, is I have complaints ABC about you, and you need to change them, and you have complaints XYZ about me, and I need to change them.
Yeah,
and that's it. The things that bother me, that's your fault. You got to fix that. And the things that bother you, that's my fault, and I got to fix that.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that there's not compromise in there, right? If I leave the dishes, whatever, and that bothers you, okay, it's on you that bothers you, and maybe that's on me to be more considerate about it, right? But it isn't.
Yeah, but it's on you to be more considerate about, to realize that Tanya is struggling with this trigger in her life.
Right.
And then you can be compassionate towards me.
Right.
And not change it because I'm an idiot and I'm trying to get you to change your behavior.
Right.
But you can just take compassion onto someone who is struggling.
Right. But it doesn't mean you have to.
But you have to frame it as that. You have to frame it. The reason why you're doing it is because you are akin to you being a human and to me being a human. And here's a human being who's struggling with something. But responsibility one is talk to Tanya, or make sure that Tanya is in the frame of mind that she understands why the dishes in the sink are bothering her.
Right.
Right. Like, what is the trigger?
Spoiler alert, there's something in childhood that's causing that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And then there are plenty of times where I still get triggered about certain things, and it takes me a while to loop back in and then like recenter. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Not to have an outburst reaction to it.
Sure. But that's what it means to be human.
Yeah. But the responsibility is still on me at all times, right? You can be compassionate towards going, oh, okay, Tanya's having a hard time over there, right?
Yeah.
But that's about it. Right. The second a relationship goes into a direction, which I think this is what the paradigm shift is. It comes down to, now we can no longer propagate a narrative to where you having a problem with this is my fault.
Yeah.
Now it's like you're having a problem with it. Why? It's on you.
Yeah,
that's like not normal, like normal by I'm saying
common.
Like common or typical of before 2022 back.
Right, because most people go, well, anybody would have a problem with this, whatever it is,
Yeah. But if somebody's in that mindset, like I have a problem with it, therefore somebody's responsible, that no longer works forward.
Right, and like there's different have a problem with something. There's like two levels of that. There's, oh, I don't prefer this. And then there's, oh my gosh, I have such a charge over this. This is really bothering me. This is really triggering me.
Yeah.
Right? I don't prefer that there happens to be a little hole in the wall over there, but I'm not losing any sleep over it. But there are plenty of things that I have and probably still do lose sleep over, way out of proportion to what it should be to someone else. There'd be someone else, or you, or anybody else. Oh, whatever it is, it would drive them crazy. And I'm like, eh. And then vice versa. I'll lose it over something so trivial that you wouldn't even notice. Those are the things, especially those things that are deeply rooted in childhood trauma, that we want to make other people's fault and other people's responsibility to fix. But it's not. We need to fix the thing that's triggering us.
Yeah.
And only then, when we can, actually approach it at the proper level of, oh, there's a little hole in the wall. Okay, I guess I got to plaster over it or whatever. Then it can be dealt with in the 3D world, if it needs to be dealt with in the 3D world, and it may not even need to be dealt with once you get over it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, once you maybe recognize the deep-rooted trigger, right?
Yeah.
Because, usually this is not justifiable, but this is just kind of like a drill-down explanation of what happens is the second you start going out into the world and blaming somebody else based on the fact that you're somehow aroused into, an emotional overflow, usually negative, right? Because those are the noticeable ones. Then you would go, oh, look, I feel all this emotional uprising, and therefore it's their fault. But it obviously, 80-something podcasts now, we have talked about that is because you have designed this as a system to keep you from seeing the deep-rooted trauma or the overwhelm, emotional overwhelm, the nervous system override that basically causes you to like freeze and not know what the fuck to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Instead of going into that spot where you feel that much overwhelm, you basically have these little pathways of triggers that take you away.
Yeah.
Right? And so the paradigm shift is just that, is that we can no longer use the outside world to hide away from those emotional overrides. Like the emotional overrides are coming up, period. And then everything right now is basically a reflection of how hard everyone is trying to work at hiding the override that they're actually feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I've been struggling with this for months now, and it's like a continuational struggle. Then I thought, oh my gosh, look, I'm slowly getting used to it, but look how much it's taking, right? So everything is at the surface, like all the time, like all the triggers, deep-rooted triggers are always coming up, and they're always at the surface. And it's been like this for months. Like this is May. I mean, I think, I would wager to say that March, they were already there. So like at least 2 months, if not more. And so like just everything is right there at the surface, right? So to one extent, you always have this opportunity to recognize that all of these triggers that are always, always, always there are there as opportunities to soothe the system down, right? To choose not to react to the trigger, but instead to go into calming the system. And that's difficult to do if you're always at a point of arousal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been basically in the state for forever. Honestly, it just seems like forever. I now it's been so long. It's interesting because I'm like, I think it's been so long that now I don't even remember how not to be in the state of total arousal at all times, of like at the point of just constantly being triggered, which is really strange. And so I'm getting used to, over the last several months, to always being at the point of trigger. Right? When before I would dismiss it and I would try to bury it, right? Because now my conscious effort is don't dismiss it, just always feel it, always feel it. And so when you have that as your baseline and the triggers are always there, it's basically a continuous practice of like, okay, how many times, out of, let's say 50 throughout the day, am I going to succeed and not react and instead go into some sort of nervous system soothing?
Right. And there's different levels of react. React, could be throw a plate across the room. React could be, say something. React could be, catch yourself and not say something, but you almost say something. React could be even notice it. Right. And those are getting better as you go down that scale.
Yeah, no, but
ideally, it passes through without even even triggering something. Ideally, but maybe not.
yeah, no, but but the array of the triggers and the set of responses that you can possibly have as reactory responses, and then also set of choices you can make into instead of reacting what you do to soothe that trigger are endless. Like
Yeah,
there are
right.
endless triggers. There are endless possibility of unprocessed reactions or processed whatever, like the scale of these reactions.
Sure.
And there's endless amount of tools or approaches you can use to not react and then thus choose a different way.
Right.
And all of that is like, at least for me, is at the forefront all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like a daily, minute by minute challenge of, do I react to this? How do I react to this? How do I soothe the system with this? And it's crazy. The speed at which it's always happening. And it's, I'm slowly getting used to the idea of it. But to begin with, oh my gosh, it was completely overwhelming.
Yeah. No, it is really interesting to see it play out, to catch and go, oh, look, there's something that does trigger me, that would trigger me, that used to trigger me, that really triggers me. And, catch it and go, oh, my gut reaction is to yell or blame or, throw something or get a drink or, go for a run, whatever it is. All right, take a second. That's not what I should do. Let's do some breathing exercises instead. Whatever it, maybe breathing exercises help. Maybe meditation helps. Maybe going for a run helps. Maybe just sitting or walking or being in nature or whatever it is. Those are all much better ways to deal with it than, picking a fight or getting a drink or.
Oh no. In my case, it's acknowledging that it's there and then be willing to go into the pain, right? It's not acknowledge that there is a trigger that is maybe coming or is at the forefront, right? Like half of the time, I think, I said this in the podcast before, if you have spent 40 years trying to suppress yourself from feeling things, sometimes things don't even come up when they should.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I'm really familiar with that. There will be something that I know bothers me, but when I try to feel it, it's just numb.
Yeah, numb, or like this should, like, if you look at like, okay, look, this happened, this should cause some sort of emotional something. And in my case, if I spend 40 years trying to suppress and control my emotional flow because it felt unsafe, then half of the time I'm like, oh, look, my system is so numb. They're like, oh, no, like crying is okay here, but I have numbed myself out from crying. Or like, oh, feeling an influx here and recognizing that it is okay to feel hurt in this moment is okay.
Yeah.
But yet the system is numb. So like the fact that I'm going into even those spaces, the spaces where in the past I would have not allowed myself to even feel the baseline of like human 101, emotional range 101 is already a challenge.
Yeah. No, I that's been my experience too, because I've also been very good at not feeling. And so just realizing it's okay to feel angry, happy, sad, whatever. It's okay. That's great. You feel something, that's great. Means you're alive.
Yeah, no, but so the repeat cycle of this is one, feel it.
Yeah.
And actually feel it for its truth, not disguised bullshit, right? Like actually go, wait, where does it actually hurt, right? And the right thing to do is actually go into your childhood. Like, how does this child feel in this situation? The chances are overwhelmed, right? Unsafe, scared, crying, whatever. And then allow yourself, to stay in that space of overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
That's a choice that most of us run away from actively. So one, we don't even let ourselves feel the fact that we feel something.
Mm-hmm.
And so one, just allow yourself to feel that you feel something. And then when you'll feel it, go into the deep-rooted child trauma of, remember, like, I think Friday I was telling you, like, I just feel completely overwhelmed. Like with some of these emotions, I feel like I'm drowning, just always drowning. It's like a constant fear of drowning. And I'm like, at some times I feel like I'm drowning nonstop. And I'm like, it doesn't even make sense because technically you drown, you're dead and it's over. But in this case, it's like a repeated drowning.
Waterboarding.
Maybe it's almost like waterboarding, right? Because you would almost hope for a release of death to where you're not constantly drowning. So yeah, it is like waterboarding, I guess. And so, so I'm always drowning. I'm always in the mode of panic. And so to allow my psyche to stay in that mode of panic and be okay with that choice is a struggle within itself, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly over the last 2 months training myself to stay in that space where it's extremely uncomfortable and I'm drowning and it's unsafe and I'm screaming and I'm crying and it's complete overwhelm. But then once I'm in that space, basically start to regulate the system in there. So like be in that space and then start to send your body a different message of let's start the square breathing.
Yeah.
Like continue to feel this, continue to acknowledge this as your total truth, but start square breathing to where you're calming the nervous system in that space and not up here on the superficial level.
Right. I mean,
you're not releasing by doing drugs and alcohol and not even going into the space.
Right.
You're going into the space where you need to go, which is where, where really we have been running away from, and starting to soothe that system.
Right. It's yes. You let yourself be in this very painful, vulnerable place where you get as close to the root level as you can.
Well, yeah.
It's like,
in my case, I'm screaming and crying.
Yeah, but if you can dig down to some childhood event or some childhood trauma that precipitated that feeling, as direct or indirect as that might be, and you can experience that, that's where it hurts the most. It's not the hole in the wall. It's the hole in the wall makes me feel unsafe because, the house is falling down as a child, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But it's that. If you can, when you feel that's super raw. And then if you
it's overwhelming. You have to get to the point of overwhelm.
But at the same time, if you can use, you're basically manipulating your parasympathetic nervous system by doing square breathing, because if you're under actual attack, that's not how you breathe. You're hyperventilating when you're under attack. So if you're purposely taking these slow, deliberate breaths, maybe your out breath is longer than your in breath. That's something that you only do when things are perfectly fine. So you're basically tricking your brain into thinking it's okay that I'm this scared child, or tapping on the head. There's a whole bunch of parasympathetic nerve endings up here, or like we do a yoga thing where you roll around halfway upside down on your head on the ground. And those are all great ways to teach your body, teach your psyche, it's okay, even though you're flipping out, and it works. It calms that down.
Well, I think
it releases that energy.
I think it releases. I think that's what it is. Not only, it's not like an escapism to where I'm just trying not to feel it. The goal is trying to feel it as much as possible, but at the same time, release it by changing a neural pathway associated with that feeling.
Crying releases it.
Yeah, I guess degree. I'm just not really good at crying.
Laughing releases it to some degree.
Psychotic laughing.
There's various ways to do that, but yeah, but you can't release it if you're up here worried about the hole in the wall at that level.
Yeah,
maybe you can release this hole in the wall, maybe, but then there'll eventually be something else.
Yeah, that's so amazing, because I say amazing, it's kind of painful that the universe will always bring you the exact version or a different seemingly problem in the outside world that actually hits the exact same rooted pain body that you're not addressing from your childhood, right? Like that's what the world will always do, right? And back in the olden day, as far as the shift of paradigm goes, we didn't see this channel of progression. We just always went out. Right? We always went, oh, look, I'm being triggered because, I don't have any food for the winter. It's the end of the world. This is my reality. And now I'm going to spend basically lifetimes not sleeping, stressing out about the scenario. But the truth is propagating the roundabout way of that being your truth. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so thus it is your truth, right? I brought this up. This is like slightly on the pivot point of this, but this is the same thing. Right? Your parents and my parents were, and we, right? Like I even wrote this in my book. I think when you have a child, you love it so much, you want to shield it from all the terrible things that happen to you, right?
Yeah, specifically that happened to you.
Yeah, that happened to you, right? Because you're like, oh, all the shit that is fucked up, I am not going to do this to my child, right? And so on a rudimentary level, it seems like, well, yeah, why would you want to subject your child to if you love your child, why would you want to subject them to the same trauma or to the same worries of the world, the same circumstances that you had?
Yeah, the X happened to me and that sure hurt. So sure going to make sure that doesn't happen to my kid.
Yeah, right. And so on the surface, nothing seems to be wrong with it, but it's the most wrong thing you can possibly do, because the truth is you're in the influx of unprocessed trauma and pain, right, from your own childhood. You're actively afraid of it. You're vibrating it in fear. And then you're going out and giving literally the baton of that fear to your child, thinking that this is saving them from it because everything that you're doing is trying to shield them from it. But the truth is that is the only thing that you're actually vibrating out. Does that make sense? Am I explaining it well?
I'm not sure. I mean, I almost see it as, is this like seesaw type thing.
No, it doesn't matter what you do with it. It doesn't matter if you dive into it and try to go 180 degrees this way, or if you actually quite literally pass on the exact duplicate this way. The only thing that matters is you're vibrating in that state of fear. So the only thing that your child does, and the children are extremely intuitive, is they pick up on that vibratory frequency. And what you're doing with it, even if it's for all intents and purposes positive, they're not receiving that. They're quite literally receiving the unprocessed fear that you're not acknowledging, that you're just trying to shield them from, but you're actually giving it to them. Does it make sense?
Yeah. I guess I was going in a more 3D sense of this generational flip-flopping back and forth between one, quote, bad thing and then the opposite, which itself could be a bad thing.
But none of it is good.
None of it's good. None of it's
what
wholesome,
I want to say is,
but it's bounced between, this, generationally, this pain body of, my mother grew up rather poor. And I think, as she, and that was her thing, they didn't have a lot. So as an adult, having stuff, being perceived to have nice stuff, having it all together was of utmost importance to her. And so that got passed to me. So I didn't grow up poor. I always had food and shelter and whatever. But now I've got that bag of shit.
No. But think about what you actually have. Like, this is another thing that is important to acknowledge. You actually have the direct representation, unaltered representation of that ancestral trauma passed through right to you. It doesn't matter if you experienced it or not. Through the ancestral propagation of that was just the vibration of your household. I have to make sure that we look like we have things. God passed on directly to you. Yeah.
And that's how I grew up. It's that appearances matter a lot. Gotta look a certain way, which, really fed this,
No, but think about this, okay, right? So what you would take away from it, right? You don't understand that she's doing this from her pain body of, I grew up poor, and so I don't understand that this is a deep-rooted pain body that I need to address. So from the easiest standpoint of comprehension, the only thing I can do is I'm going to make sure that I go out of my way not to have anyone around me know what I actually am, how she feels inside, right? Is insecure and like she's not good enough and, she's unworthy and unwanted, right? And I'm going to go out of my way and put on this show, this theatrical performance where we wear expensive clothes, where we drive nice cars, where we have nice house, where we have the perfect marriage, right? But think about the deep down vibrational frequency. That's the output. The physical output is, oh, look, this family is perfect.
Yeah.
But what is she actually vibrating? She's vibrating the opposite of what she feels. She's not wanted. She's undesired. She's nothing, right? And, and nobody respects her or understands her.
Right. And that's what I got.
That is what you got.
That's what I got. Yeah, that's what I was
in
going.
a different way, right? Like you would have never correlated it to go, oh, well, that's what my mother had. And because she was vibrating that and she went out of her way to hide that through material things, which is what she thought would make her feel better.
Mm-hmm.
She passed on baton to you directly without any alteration to it. And then you got that exact same fucked up shit,
right?
But under a different cloak.
Yeah, because it isn't the material things with me. It's the more how I look, but not in a material way. How I act, how I come across. How I'm perceived.
But
that's how.
But that was her thing. It's perceived.
Yeah.
The material was just what she grabbed onto in the outside world.
Yeah. To
mask the fact that she doesn't feel seen well, respected, worthy, undirty. Do you know what I mean? Like just from the handful of stories that she would tell me back when I used to talk to her, right? Like you could tell that was her pain body, is that they were dirt poor, they had no clothes, and they were just scraping by. Mm-hmm. And so that set off with her as her identity. I'm unwanted, right? I'm unseen, I'm dirty. And that's my truth. Which,
yeah, that was my truth.
Right. But that's your truth. So that's what I'm saying is this approach, I don't know if I guess we're still in the old paradigm, right? Used to just be this ancestral pass through from my parents, like, oh, I'm going to shield them from making sure they don't feel the way I do. And it doesn't matter what they do about it. It actually completely doesn't matter what blanket they put onto it to cover the shit up. As long as they're vibrating that frequency, that's the exact frequency that will just travel forward, because that's the energetic expression that actually gets passed on through, regardless of what you're doing on the surface, right? To cover it up or to make sure that this doesn't happen.
Right. And that's there's a subtle difference here. It's like if you grew up without shelter, without food, obviously you would want your child to have shelter and have food. But it's like where that's coming from. It's like,
no, unless you're addressing that from a pain body, like, look, I'm vibrating fear of no shelter and no food.
That's what I mean.
Disservice, complete disservice.
Have you worked through your own stuff enough to be able to provide shelter and food from a loving place of compassion, or are you still doing it because I'm never going to let that happen to my kid because, that's the worst thing that's ever happened to me and I'm still carrying that along with me, this ball and chain.
But that's the responsibility. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
This is the responsibility that no one wants to admit that they're not taking.
Yeah.
Is looking back on themselves as, even if I'm doing a good thing, am I doing it for the right reason?
Right. That's it.
And the truth is,
it can be the right thing for the wrong reason.
The truth is,
and that can do damage.
But then, there's the step back that you could take. What is it that I'm actually vibrating? Regardless of what is it that I'm doing.
Yeah.
What is it that I'm feeling deep down inside? And we have blocked that off from the self. So the old paradigm is that we have been refusing to acknowledge what we actually feel minute by minute basis. And we have been just blind, basically running around, literally with blinders, pretending to give our attention to something else so we don't have to feel this responsibility within us.
Yep.
And that paradigm is dropping. Like, quite literally, universe has designed it to where no one is able to function that way.
Yeah. And there's enough unavoidable stuff, and I'm not even I mean, it's certainly unavoidable if you turn on the news. But if it's just
No, it's all internal.
Life now it is unavoidable to not feel that.
Yeah.
And the question is, what do you do with that? Do you distract and numb it out, or do you?
But the distractions don't work. That's what I would say. The paradigm has shifted. I guess just like the show said yesterday, the mechanics of it do not matter. But I realize what it is you can no longer go into this fake area of self where distractions work. No amount of distractions of self are allowed to exist, right? So basically what used to happen is you used to feel it was so overwhelming and so too much that you designed this whole basically room system to avoid the feeling, right? It's almost like this little bypass filter they used to have, like, oh, instead of feeling it, acknowledging and then processing it and then allowing it to flow out. That is how a normal system should work. Prior to this paradigm shift, we had this bypass, like, oh, here's I feel it, bloop, and I'm going to go to the side and function in this pretend fake world where everything is hunky-dory.
Compartmentalizing it.
Yeah, but it was a bypass. It's a system bypass to where the feeling actually never made it into conscious awareness because we automatically had something to do, somewhere to go to distract ourselves from whatever. Right? And that has always worked. It has always been there as an option. Like you just always had that.
I think maybe COVID was one of the big things that really made that obvious. Was that now a lot of those things that people would do to distract were just not options anymore.
Well, I mean, that made it obvious from the physical standpoint. But what I'm saying right now with this paradigm shift is they don't work from an energetic standpoint.
Yeah, I don't know that they worked back then either, but it was just like people were like for the first time in their lives forced to feel.
Yeah, because I mean, some of the distractions were removed.
Right.
But you could still find other distractions. The sourdough making went out of the roof. Do you know what
sourdough.
I mean? Yeah, shala on my end.
A lot of baking.
Yeah, there was a lot of baking going on because, bread, guess what? If you feel unsafe, and the whole thing with COVID back, in March and April was, do you feel unsafe?
Yeah.
And what was the easiest way that you could feel safe? Oh, I can make my own bread because, bread is essential for survival. So guess what? I will survive no matter what as long as I have bread.
It is said that man does not live on bread alone.
There you go. Right. So with me, bread making was like, but I was right there with most of the world. Most of the world all of a sudden found bread making. Right. And the flour prices.
We couldn't buy flour. It was crazy.
No, but because everybody was making bread. That was the thing, right? Like sourdough became a thing. I never
couldn't buy. It was crazy time.
No, but right at the point of you having this influx, this total emotional influx, to where your nervous system is just basically heightened. We have always went to, never mind. Let's just as stupid as it feels, but something I have utilized very well is just avoid feeling it. Like pretend like the nervous system does not feel influx.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And like your body would just like actually feel the influx, but you're telling your body that it doesn't. And so you're in this like fugue state of like actually feeling it, but pretending like you're not feeling it.
Right.
Which generates all kinds of fucked up.
Right. No, that's you're really sending a bad message to your body and mind when you do that.
Yeah.
You're saying you're denying your body what it feels.
Yeah, but that comes out of my childhood. Like I know that, we have talked about this. That is the mechanism the child designed in order to basically feel safe under very unsafe circumstances.
No, sure. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it is clearly a solution, a poor solution, but a solution to the problem of I don't want to feel bad.
Yeah.
So therefore, I'm going to pretend that I don't feel bad.
Yeah.
Everything's fine.
Yeah.
It feels like there's a connection to the integrating the Jungian shadow here. I was bringing Jung back, but like it's this part of you that you don't like, you don't want to be there, you don't want to acknowledge, you don't want to accept, the part that hurts, the part that's scary. And so we like literally divide ourselves in half and go, here's the part of me that I like, so I'm going to pretend that this is all of me. And all that other stuff, the stuff that hurts, the stuff that's scary, nope, that's not me. Just that doesn't even exist. We're going to pretend it doesn't exist. It does exist, but we're going to pretend that it doesn't. And then whenever it gets activated, whenever something happens that really pokes something over here, and this part of you starts to, come alive, we don't know what to do. So the easy thing to do is just, nope, I'm not going to feel that. I'm going to push that away, or I'm going to drink it away, or I'm going to, gamble it away, or exercise it, or whatever it is. Some of those are more healthy than others, but none of those are integrating it. And we all have that shadow side that is scared, that is hurt, that feels things that we don't want to feel. But only through bringing it in and going, it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel scared. It's okay that the hole, I keep saying hole because there is a hole that I keep noticing, reminds me of when the house was in danger as a child. That's okay. But the only way past that, unless you want to feel that for the rest of your life, every time you see a hole, is to go down to that childhood thing, which lives over here in the shadow, and really make friends with it and go, it's okay. Let me feel that. Let me feel that. And while I feel that, maybe I can breathe, maybe I can tap, but I can give my child self love and really integrate that. It's not to cut it off. The naive idea is that, if I can just cut that off, cut that part of me off and throw it away, then I don't have to deal with it. But it's the opposite. The solution is actually the opposite of that, is to bring it in closer and give it love. Whether it's through a shadow metaphor, whether it's through a childhood self metaphor, I think these are all like different ways of saying the same thing to me.
Yeah. I mean, none of it is rocket science, but it's the commitment and responsibility to self that everyone is lacking, right?
Yeah.
Like hearing this, and us having been trying to practice this for so long, and me being basically kind of like in the committed hard and heavy for it, and the feeling overwhelmed by the system for the last several months. Like the only thing that is keeping everyone from there is the desire to go there. And right, like this is the interesting part, is you cannot force this onto anyone, right? So like really it's kind of like a very personalized journey, and we can talk about how ours feel, but like you can't make someone go through that. But the paradigm is causing everybody to go through that.
Yeah.
And the difference is, I guess, how hard is each individual being fighting this process? And that's what it seems to be happening, is each individual soul right now is choosing how hard they're going to fight this, because it's going to happen no matter what for everybody. But how much going out and distracting self away from it are you going to continue to participate in, which is the old way of doing things, instead of basically choosing to take this internal road into the spots where it really, really hurts. And so, that's the change, is there are some people who are seeing this, right? Like, I mean, heck, there are so much spiritual teachings or new age teachings, or, I mean, like, it seems like, now I know we're kind of in the bubble of that, but you cannot not find a way that somebody's teaching this through a different approach or different words or different conversations. Right. There are basically thousands, if not millions of people are actually talking about this right now in their own way, through their own experience.
And these are not new teachings. Maybe these are new ways of saying the same thing, but this is the same thing that Buddha said 2,500 years ago. Same thing that Jesus said 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, know thyself.
It's the same. Yeah.
Yeah, just know thyself. And there are, like, it's just the one thing, and everybody has their own little things that they have developed or that they struggle with, that they're now saying, okay, here's how I did this and how I did that.
Yeah.
But there's not like a way not to get into that position. The only thing that basically is happening right now is how hard is the old system on the individual level, meaning the old you is fighting the coming of the new you.
Yeah, right. Because the old you is really connected with the
Comfort.
ego self.
It's comfort.
And it's clawing and hanging on for dear life, because at a very real level, it feels like
they're
death.
drowning.
It's going to die.
Yeah.
And you're going to die when it dies. And that is terrifying.
No. Yeah.
And so you have to do everything you can to preserve it.
Yeah. I mean, when I say like it feels like I'm constantly drowning, I keep on not dying. I'm just always drowning. Right. And so, yeah, that's what is happening. The ego is constantly trying to go out and trying to find a way not to feel, not to experience, not to acknowledge how the system actually is feeling. And staying in that space is extremely painful. And then acknowledging that you're actually feeling that, forcing yourself to feel it, and then integrating it by allowing this to be the truth. That it is okay that this is my truth, is excruciatingly painful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it does feel like ego is dying. I mean, but I don't want to go into the ego because the ego has so many connotations into it. But it's basically just, a child crying or dying or drowning or whatever, however that's the metaphor that comes to me, is just this constant drowning. But it is done on individualized level. That's the important part. The paradigm is shifting and we're seeing it as this global shift, but it's coming to each one of us from a very individualized interpretation of how do we choose to participate in this, and if we choose to participate or not.
Yeah.
Right?
No, we have, I mean, everybody has always had the opportunity, but the opportunity is more apparent, I think, now to every human on earth than it ever has been before.
Well, it's in their face.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, apparent, like almost like you can't get away from it.
Yeah. And
if you're choosing to get away from it, then like that is painful within itself.
Right. I mean, it's painful no matter what, but it's, do you want to, it's like you can rip the Band-Aid off and yeah, that hurts, but then you've done the work and the Band-Aid's gone. Or you can slowly peel it off for the rest of your life and it just hurts. Maybe it hurts less at any moment, but it hurts forever. It's
well, but like I think the metaphor actually extends, like when you are not going into that space of retrospect and personal responsibility and commitment to it, the wound will never heal. Like you're constantly actually tearing the scab off and not letting anything heal.
Yeah.
If that's
yeah.
Right. Like
that's what it is.
There's no healing.
Yeah. Your option is it will hurt forever because it never heals, or it will hurt maybe more as you deal with it, but then it's dealt with, and it will, depending on how well the dealing with it goes, it won't hurt anymore, or it will hurt a whole lot less.
Yeah.
And then maybe you need to deal with it some more to reduce that. But dealing with it down there at the childhood level, which the process sucks, it does. But the piece on the other side of that is magical.
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah. If nothing else, you just realize how exhausting it is.
Right. It's
not to feel.
You realize how much shit you've been lugging with you your whole life, and you're just like, oh my God, I can let that go.
Or if nothing else, just acknowledging that this is something, the system that you're running, this is like a distraction point that you're utilizing as a way to away from self.
That's the first step.
Well, no, but that you actually see the pathway that this creates of like a complete drain on your system. Like when you get down into that childhood level and you start to feel this overwhelm and you like acknowledge it. Oh my gosh, look, this trigger is just driving all of these sets of behaviors that I don't have to participate in, realizing that I'm just trying to mitigate this trigger or mitigate actually not feeling like X, right? Not feeling like shit or not feeling unwanted or not feeling unloved or whatever it is, right? and the sets of behaviors that you engage in subconsciously for these medications are ginormous. Like at some point I'm like, how does a human being have any energy left at the end of the day, period, or maybe even halfway through the day, if you're always running some sort of form of medicational way of living? Do you know what I mean?
Right. No.
That's why we're caffeinated to the nth degree, and have 4 or 5 cups of coffee throughout the day, is because the system itself cannot run on its natural energetic current, because you're overwhelming the system with basically not feeling this, not feeling that, not feeling this, not feeling that. And we're exhausted.
It takes a lot of energy to not feel something.
Yes.
Right? You think it really doesn't take that much energy to feel something. You just have to relax into it, and it comes.
We're just so overwhelming.
It's overwhelming in its own way, but it doesn't take effort.
It's not draining. It's actually energizing.
Right. I think the natural state, if you just relaxed, you would feel things. But to actively go, nope, not going to feel this, not going to think about that.
Yeah. Oh, it's exhausting.
La.
It's exhausting. It's so exhausting. And just to actually free the system from having to run those subconscious, like little, basically exhausts out.
Yeah.
Frees up a lot of energy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have coffee anymore. I don't, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the idea of not needing this external source to function as like, oh, guess what? By 2:00, I'm dead. I was dead by 2:00. I remember that.
I remember.
If I did not have a cup of coffee around 2, there's no way I would make it through the rest of the day.
I remember those like caffeine headaches on the mornings when we didn't, and it was like oh, this is
indicating an addiction.
This is probably not healthy, but at the same time, I'm going to still do it. But yeah, it was like, oh, there is a physical dependency on caffeine. And that's probably not great. But at the same time, whatever, I'm going to keep drinking it.
Well, I mean, there's a kind of like a twofold physical dependency, because like it jitters out the system and you don't even have enough attention span to focus on how you feel, because it just numbs all of that off. But 2, it provides that boost of energy to where you can continue to numb yourself off.
Yeah.
Right. So like,
man, I would literally drink a pot of coffee a day. Back in corporate world.
This is like a huge conspiracy theory, but United States, I think, I could be wrong, but United States, I think, is the highest consumer of coffee in the world.
Per capita?
Per capita, yeah.
Right. And you think, oh no, it's Italy. They're always.
Yeah, but they're dosed in very finite quantities.
Right.
And they don't use it as an abusive system like we do.
It's like a social thing over there.
Yeah.
More than I need it so that I can get through today. My next meeting at work.
Yeah. No, but I would say, this is a conspiracy related but I would say that there's probably not a correlation into the amount of open feeling we're willing to have as a nation.
Yeah.
To the amount of coffee we use to suppress our system away from feeling.
Let alone whatever it's doing to the cardiovascular system of the people.
I mean, yeah, I'm not even saying that the lack of health benefits and actually detrimental force of it. I'm just saying, what does it do to us for being able to stop and pause and go, wait, what do I actually feel right now?
Yeah. No, it's a great, coffee is a great way to avoid that. Just like alcohol is a great way to avoid that.
But
tea doesn't, whatever has caffeine in it.
But think about that. Majority of people in the United States are addicted to coffee. Completely addicted
literally
to it.
Cannot go a day without it.
Yeah. How many people have we talked to and we're like, we don't consume caffeine, or, like green tea would be my biggest splurge. And they were like, oh, there's no way I could quit coffee. Like how many?
If you asked me 5 years ago, I would say there's no way I could quit coffee. There's no way I could stop eating meat. There's no way I could stop drinking milk. That's a recent one. I would have said the same thing. And then it's like, oh yeah, this just doesn't work anymore.
Well, it showcases itself for what it actually is, as opposed to, what you were pretending that it was.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the thing. Is like right now, everything is coming into light. With this paradigm shift, everything is coming into light.
Yeah.
And then you're like,
it becomes apparent what
is it that you're doing?
The purpose of and it isn't that coffee is bad or alcohol is bad or meat is bad necessarily, but it's what is your personal relationship with it? What is it doing to you, for you, against you? What are you using it for, to cover up or to distract from or to numb out?
Mm-hmm. The unhealthiness of those relationships is becoming very apparent.
Right.
Right.
And it isn't even, being addicted to it or not. It's right. It's like, I think I could just have a glass of wine and it wouldn't be a thing. But back in the day, it was a thing. It was a thing, let alone the fact that I was a raging alcoholic. It was a way to not feel. It was very much a way to not feel. Oh, it's a stressful day. Now we're going to drink.
Oh, no, I mean, I remember like I would go to a meeting. I would come back from the meeting and, like I'm obviously angry and an influx. And instead of like actually acknowledging it, I would drink to numb it.
Yeah, no.
Granted, I still continued to bitch about it, but not in the productive way to where I would go, well, why did that trigger me? Right? Like that never came into mind.
Look at what this person did. It's completely their fault. They're the ones that need to change.
Yes, it was nothing was productive. There was no productivity. It was distraction and then a bitch session out to blame the world for it. As opposed to like, wait, why is this triggering me?
Yeah.
Like that loop never looped back into why. And I mean, maybe deep down in the psyche, you almost like feel like, yeah, I think I'm like avoiding actually covering up. I'm actually covering up and avoiding deep down saying why this is my responsibility. Do you know what I mean? Like but, maybe there was a spark in there that made me think that, but alcohol definitely didn't help with that.
I mean, I think it's pretty well accepted that I assume that, I had a bad day, therefore I go get a drink to, people would word it as feel better, but really it's to feel less bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the number one reasons why people drink. I mean, you can do it in a social setting, but that's not far off. That's about the same thing.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying alcohol is inherently good, bad, right, wrong. It's what it means to you.
No, I mean, I'm just giving an example of how I used it.
Yeah, no, that's how I used it too.
There's no productivity in that. I would
feel how I don't want to feel, and alcohol would make me not feel like that. It's not that it would make me feel better. It would make me feel less bad.
I will say this about alcohol.
Those are a bunch of cons, but on the pro side.
Yeah, on the pro side, whenever I would go into that like subdued, dozed out state where like, like your senses are kind of suppressed and like sooner or later you're kind of like not too much in the physical world, I would automatically go into my etheric spiritual self. And so the amount of paranormal activity or like amount of like visions or weird, what now back then I would call supernatural or things that I would experience, because like, like the personal veil that I had to shut myself off from that would just open. That is after I stopped bitching. Like, right, it would just open and then I was not shut off from the spiritual notions of this larger realm.
Right.
And so to some extent, I think what happened is, my higher self or my spirit guides or my angels or whatever you would call it would utilize that time as an opportunity to pipe into me to help me like, hey, maybe we should turn this ship around. Like, maybe we should look inside. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it always like, I always touched this different realm. And yeah, alcohol was a very good inducer of that. In fact, remember that time we had our like, experience after the dinner at Ceviche?
Yeah.
And like we were alcoholized.
Alcoholized.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the tension, right? Because here's what, like, I can directly tell you what it does to me, or used to do to me, right? If something feels unsafe to me, which is my major trigger, like really the only trigger, when my child feels like drowning, it's usually because I'm being triggered into unsafety. So when I feel unsafe, my number one way to feel safe is to pretend to exercise control. And so my body goes rigid, like quite literally, my entire sense goes rigid, right? I shut off all the extrasensory perception and now I'm rigid because I'm in control. Like, do you know what I mean? Like energetically, think about, I don't know if you use control as much as I do, but right, like the control is there and quite literally shuts off all extrasensory perception. Like my entire system is just basically this blocked off grid, right? Like there's no flow or deviation. It's just like stay as rigid as possible. I know physically I'm moving, but energetically that's it. There's just like might as well be a concrete center block, right? And so that made me feel safe because everything was protected. There's nothing coming in, nothing coming out, complete superficial idea of control. And what the alcohol does, it basically loosens the control idea, right? So like, do you know what I mean? It puts me into like, I don't know if you experience that, but it puts me into the subdued state to where the body, you're sitting more relaxed. And so the idea of control becomes unnecessary because you feel less unsafe. So whatever alcohol does made me feel less unsafe.
Yeah.
And so thus the control went away. The rigid box that would not let the world touch me kind of disappeared. And then thus the extrasensory perception that was always around me, that was always part of my system, was actually flowing. And so like I would, like a lot of the times, like I would lay down to bed when I was still having a buzz or like after a glass of wine, right? And I would have people from the other side talk to me all the time, like very vividly, like, there's zero doubt in my head that this was happening. But at the time, I know I'm not creating it because I'm kind of in like a subdued alcoholic state. And so I'll just hear, like my grandfather talk to me after he passed away through that state, right? But it's because that box of rigid idea of control was let down because I opened myself up to the actual truth that is the world.
Right. Mine's similar. I would feel less bad about myself. I would feel less like there's less wrong with me. And so that was very relaxing to me.
Oh, yeah. Just whatever your pain body is.
To not feel this constant sense of like everything, I'm bad, I'm wrong, everything's wrong with me, everything's my fault, whatever, it would lessen that. So that's what I got out of alcohol.
Yeah. I mean, your trigger gets suppressed.
Yeah. Whatever your trigger is gets suppressed. Yeah. There you go.
But then through that, I would assume in that same way, think about this. If the trigger is suppressed, then whatever tool you use to not feel that trigger is lessened.
Sure.
In my case, it was control.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, in as much as isn't that everybody's tool, control?
Yeah, I know, but whatever your particular version of control is, right?
Yeah.
But the control. Think about this. When you feel the need for that control, right? Think about how much rigidness is in your body, right? Like think about your energetic system and how it's reacting or how it's flowing or really not flowing when you're in a state of control.
Yeah, not much.
So like the truth of you, exploration of gnosis of self is not even an option because you're just basically in some sort of blocked off cement cube of la 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 land. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And coffee definitely promotes that. Coffee allows you to stay in that cubed off land very easily.
Yeah.
Because it gives you more energy to upkeep this cube. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that.
Right. So, I mean, other things too. Right. That's why a lot of times when people, when you started doing Kundalini, right? And you go into that state where you're trying to, do the breathing or do the physical work together with the breath, and then like you cannot sustain the length of it, think about what's doing is you're losing control, right? Like you are at the point where you're pushing your system to like, oh, I cannot do another sit-up and breath coordination, period, because the system is losing it. And so your brain is basically going haywire because it feels like it's losing control.
Yeah. I mean, but it's not just Kundalini. It's that. It's if I'm lifting and I'm trying to do one more, or if I'm running and I'm like, I feel like I need to stop, but I'll just like, no, I'm going to make it to that stop sign, whatever it is. It's the same thing.
No, I'm just giving Kundalini as an example just because that's something we do often, or I do often.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
but like that pushing past that threshold is control. Is you pushing? It's you that the mental like override that you feel is letting this box of control be dropped. The control that is sustaining you, that is allowing you to, that you think is your survival toolkit right now, is being questioned, is being hit.
Oh, the control of I want to stop it.
Oh.
The control of I need to control this and stop it. I need to control this and save my life type of thing, versus the control of I'm going to power through and do the 5 more sit-ups.
When you're struggling to push past that barrier is because your body or mind or physical senses are giving out past this box of pretend control.
Is the control, I want to control it and stop it, or I want to control it and push through? Which control are you talking about?
The overall, to me, the overwhelm is, I don't think I can go past this.
Yeah.
And so that's when you're hitting this control barrier.
Okay.
You're cognitively, your mind is cognitively hitting the barrier where you recognize that you have this box of control. And you're somehow threatening that line. I'm not saying it matters what you do with it, but that's the line that you're hitting.
Oh, just bringing the control to your
to
attention.
the surface.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Okay,
It's bringing it to your attention.
Sure.
Like,
No,
this is my box.
There's nothing.
This is my box.
There's nothing. Okay, I see what you mean. It is super apparent that there is a control issue. Yes, in that situation, and especially when I'm running, and I'm just like, oh my God, I need to stop running. I need to turn it down into a walk. But it's like, I'm not going to die if I keep running, right? I'm not going to die if I keep doing the Kundalini shake. I know that, right? But on the other hand, kind of feels like it. It feels like, oh, I've pushed my body too hard. I need to turn it down. And so there's these two opposites, right? And you're torn in the middle between, do I give in and like stop, take the easy road, the lazy road, which feels a little judgy, or do I, damn it, double down and power through and keep going, take the hard road, the manly road, whatever, however you want to look at this, right? And it's super, this weird ethical debate plays out in my mind as that happens.
Yeah, but I would say that regardless of what you choose to do, the important part about being in that point is you recognize, this is my control box.
Yeah.
This is the threshold where my mind is at its like a crossroads of a fight.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like, Kundalini's goal is to push you or to put you in that place to where you're constantly hitting that barrier.
Right.
And the more you hit that barrier, the more tenacity you have to face it and go, oh, look, I have a responsibility to go inside and actually realize what I feel, right? Like, what childhood trauma this is hitting. Like, in my case, right, in Kundalini, it's like unsafety, just unsafety from my physical form, and be okay with that feeling.
Yeah. The naive, what I originally thought, the naive approach is, oh, I need to hit this in order to push that wall further down. So the next time I don't hit it. Next time I can do the shakes for 3 minutes and then I'm done. Problem solved. It's not that. The goal is to hit it.
The goal is to hit it and to go inside and feel the terrifying drowning child on safety that you feel.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually matter at all if you stop right there and feel that, or if you continue to shake. The only thing that is important is you actually go into that drowning of a child feeling, which is what that exercise is supposed to do.
Yeah.
The physical outflow of it is completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
And in fact, that you look at it like, oh no, I'm going to persevere and control myself and push myself further. That's just you trying to make this boundary, this concrete box bigger.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's just push it,
right?
Push it on.
Yeah.
And now the box is further away from the starting line. And eventually, maybe you can get through a marathon or whatever it is,
Right.
Then you can do 6 in a row in the Sahara Desert.
Right. Right. And I still have a trigger about this, but there's a certain YouTuber out there that I'm talking about. And it's just so obvious that no marathon, no athletic performance, your body, right? So what's happening is you're losing so much. You're basically spiraling out of control so much within this box of concrete that you have set up around yourself. And the barriers are being pushed and pushed and pushed. And you're losing it so much that no amount of physical challenge will do in order to get you not to completely feel like crap.
Right. The secret is, in the end, it doesn't matter if you stop or keep pushing. It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't, you don't need to engage in a 6-day, 100-mile marathon.
Yes.
To get to this point.
Yeah. It doesn't. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what it is. If it's Kundalini or it's work or it's running or it doesn't matter. Feel it. I mean, maybe you have a goal of I want to be able to do this, or maybe the goal is I don't want to push myself because whatever. Those are all completely irrelevant to feel it.
Yeah, but I guess my thing is this is what's why does I find this sad? Yeah, I find it sad because it pains me, like when we did ayahuasca. This is the same feeling I had. It pains me.
Looking in the mirror? Why do I have to do this to myself?
Yes, but I saw this within myself. But then I realized, oh my gosh, all 30 of us around this fire are probably experiencing this. The amount of personal suffering we have to endure and put ourselves through in order just to get to the core, to feel what we actually feel and give that portion of ourselves love, right? Like you and I went through a ayahuasca ceremony for that, which is pretty extreme. But some people are doing 100-mile marathons in the desert.
It's like 150.
Whatever. To do that same thing, right? And think about what, does it feel good at the end to have a new experience? Yes.
Sure.
Does it feel good at the end to go, oh my gosh, look how much I have overcome?
Sure.
But at all points, right, that box is what you need to face.
Mm-hmm.
And that box does not have to come with lifetime of suffering.
Right.
That box can just be seen by sitting down and doing 5 minutes of deep breathing.
Sure.
Right? A box breathing. Like when we do our breathwork session, right? I mean, heck, it's 30 minutes of literally laying down and taking 2 breaths in and 1 breath out. I think that's what it is, right? And oh my gosh, we lose it.
Yeah, right.
It does not take much to hit this box.
Right.
And then the goal of it is to hit this box and to go, oh my gosh, let me go into this space and surrender past this self barrier of control or pretend barrier of control and actually feel myself for the first time. Right. And you cry and you laugh and I shake, and that's the way the body releases the unprocessed trauma that breath is basically holding, right? Or that this breath is penetrating. But it's the willingness to go into that space, right? Like it doesn't take $4,000 and flying to the Sahara Desert for a week to accomplish that, right? You don't have to do
4,000 euros.
whatever. You don't have to do 2 weeks of, ayahuasca diet and then, have the ayahuasca
for 2 nights.
For 2 nights, right? And then be vomiting and all that stuff just to get to that space.
Right.
Like
that's one way, but you don't have to.
No. There's like the world is full of those opportunities. And it's almost like that is what you need when you think that's what you need. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then deep down, if you step back from all of it, you don't need any of it. You just need to have the willingness to look inside, which is kind of like the most cowardly thing we avoid. Like I look at myself as a coward when I am not willing to see myself within and not willing to feel the amount of pain that I need to feel, and then not willing to give my child a chance to be seen and heard.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm a coward. Like I'm running away from my own personal pain.
Right.
And it was super difficult to admit to myself as that. I don't know why. It was difficult. It was several months ago that I admitted to that. But I'm like, yeah, that's what it is. I'm just a coward.
Yeah.
Running away from myself.
Yeah, I feel the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.